What I like that you mentioned throughout your conversations is this whole notion of being dehumanized and this whole notion of reclaiming your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's foundational in everything you've spoken about since we've been together. And I really appreciate you distilling this to the retaking of,
Mm-hmm.
by force if necessary, right?
Yep.
In a peaceful way, but by force, affirming our humanity, who we are as people,
Yep.
and how just because of the color of our skin should not diminish who we are as a human being. That you as an institution should see me as who I am as a human and value that and have me be a part of this institution in a way that's going to be fruitful for all.
Yep.
So I just want to affirm that. I've been hearing that throughout the whole presentation. And as I said earlier, I'm a student. I'm sitting there taking notes. But even in the podcast, you're bringing that up and you're hitting home the notion that we are human beings. Right.
First.
Right. You know, when the civil rights movement at its apex, right, and all the things that were going on. When you think of what was going on in Memphis with those sanitation workers, right, and the signs that they carried said, "I am a man," right. I'm to be valued. I'm not to be belittled. And our young people feel that way, right? They saw what happened, with our brother George Floyd, and many others, right? That we could just be on this podcast for hours if we want to name all of those men, young boys, and young ladies that have been killed at the hands of an oppressive system. Mm-hmm. And so this whole notion, and then where does that oppression start, right? We know where it starts. It starts from the moment you walk into an institution that devalues me, whatever the institution is. And so bigger than what we've been talking about, which is the how. Mm-hmm. This brother's been talking about the reason why. The stakes are too high. Mm-hmm. Our young children are dying. People have written dissertations, books about the babies in the water going down the river. Oh, look at these poor babies. They're underwater. Oh, look at them. But nobody's going up the hill like Pruitt and saying, why are you throwing those babies in the water in the first place? You need to stop that. And so I think it's so crucial that, yes, we're teaching them how to do circles, and they're practicing it. We're teaching them about the mediations, and they're practicing it. But and I hope Noble, community got it, what Pruitt was talking about throughout the whole thing was humanity is at the core of this. Relationship, right? Rules without relationship reaps rebellion. There's going to be rebellion, right? And if you're trying to capture culture, you have to understand that that's basic relationship. We were in rooms with our colleagues. We were even sitting in the actual forum, with our colleagues and talked for about 40 minutes, 30 minutes about a puzzle that they were dealing with, the struggles that they're dealing with, the feeling of devalued, right? Feeling like they were being put in the middle of situations instead of being seen as a valued participant in the situation. And I know how that feels. I know how that felt being put in that situation and being made to feel like, well, you the kumbaya guy over there in that little peace room, and all you do, all the kids love you, but they don't love me. And, they get away with everything because they get to go in a peace circle with you. And it's getting that reframing of that thought change, that mindset, just like I had to go through in my journey of changing that mindset from thinking that what we're doing is just to check off a box.
Yeah.
So this is about humanity. This is about me seeing you, who you are, and valuing who you are. Do you know the individuals who are the most susceptible to zero tolerance? And zero tolerance audience is the philosophy that drives our school to prison pipeline, and it focuses in on those 3 areas of suspensions, expulsions, and arrests in schools. You know who the most vulnerable? Black children, right? Latinx children. Children that are LGBTQ designation, children that have 504 plans and IEPs. Those are the children that are the most susceptible to zero tolerance. And so putting in the work that Pruitt's doing in his organization, the work I'm doing in my organization, and the countless other organizations that are out here on the front line, we need help. Audience, we need your help. We need you to get aware of this work. We need you to learn more about restorative justice. We need you to go to the board meetings and encourage the board members that want your vote to have on their plank restorative justice and how that's going to dismantle the school to prison pipeline and build a school to career highway so we have more of our children being successful and getting plugged into our society as opposed to going into the prison industrial complex and some of them not even coming out or being able to come out, or their skills and their stuff is being used for the system but not for the communities that they came out of. And this whole divesting of our communities and taking all this brain trust and knowledge and shoveling in the system, shoveling it away and pushing it away. So what we're doing is we're interrupting it. There's a business model called disruptive innovation, right? Everybody knows Uber. Audience, y'all know Uber, right? You know Uber is a disruptive innovation. It started out as a small little rideshare to now it's pushing out the taxis. Now they actually go get your food too. So you got people taking their concept in Grubhub and DoorDash. Hey, Blockbuster audience, right? Nick, right? Blockbuster should be top of the streaming. They should be the top because they were the ones that were doing all of the stuff with VHSs. Now there's only one Blockbuster in the whole United States, and who took them over? Little old Netflix, right? So when I'm talking to our culture team and I'm looking in their eyes, I know you're looking in their eyes. They're from you. But Pruitt, you looking in their eyes, you can see the frustration. I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's why I told them, don't give up. This thing is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. And so when we talk about the peers, we talk about the young people, which was the work that I was talking about. I believe so strongly in our young people being successful in learning these skills. And then what is that terminology you used, Pruitt, man? It was so powerful about how it moves from the school into the home. But you had a word. What was
restorative practice, it sticks to its host.
There it is.
So like when you're doing restorative practice,
all day, y'all.
I'll connect that restorative practice in all my spaces.
Yeah.
You do it. If you worked anything, right, you're gonna bring something from your work home. Well, how about if we start to build our capacity to create spaces for people to connect with one another, to create spaces where people feel affirmed and restored? Well, that's gonna come with me. I'm not a peer mediator in a school building doesn't forget how to be a peer mediator when his cousins get into it.
That's right. Those skills are code switch.
Yeah, now I'm gonna do the same peer mediation, but I'm gonna do it for my cousins, right? Yeah. Some of us, that was same restorative circle that they did where they talked about their joy. You could take that same restorative circle and you could do it with your abuela, with your family, and now we're learning about each other because healing is remembering. Healing is bringing us back into collective membership with one another. So yes, it's remembering who we are, remembering our humanity, remembering our dignity, like remembering our thoughts, like bringing it to account, but it's also remembership. How do I make sure that everyone is recognized as being a member of our collective? So there's stories that you may be missing that you haven't created the forum to hear from your family members. Maybe you need to do restorative circle. Well, you're not necessarily restoring from a harm that your family member did, but maybe you're restoring the connection to understand to get those nutrients from those stories. When you think about gardening, one of the things I always say in these trainings is that everything you need to learn about taking care of human beings, you can learn from plants, right? And there is a term called biodiversity. And it's where in a garden, the things that have passed away, the nutrients that come from different plants, they can benefit other plants.
That's right.
Some of those nutrients are literally plants that have gone and passed away, that have left. But they left something. They left something for the plant to grow from. And so we want to make sure that we're building spaces where we can thrive. The beauty of when we're dealing in agriculture is that the seed was a forest as a seed, right? It was whatever, all the capacity for that seed to be fully, authentically what it was made to be was in seed form. Well, we have to start to ask ourselves as climate cultivators, as context cultivators in our schools is, am I creating the conditions for the seeds that I have been entrusted with to be fully actualized in the way that best fits them, to be fully who they can become? Or am I creating impediments to their growth? And if we're creating impediments, then that's where the restoration needs to happen. Because I need to restore my right relationship with the seeds that I've been trusted with. Time and time again, I kept saying, you are human beings and there are human beings that have been entrusted to you.
Absolutely, yep.
And that's why we're talking about, that's why it's important to understand, what are restorative chats, what are restorative circles, how do we do remediations? Because it's bringing that remembrance to us. It's bringing that remembering all of us are a part of a collective, and what we are teaching them, they're learning. If I'm teaching you that you are worthy, that you are valuable, that you are beautiful, that you are come with light and purpose, and that I won't do anything to dim that light or to exploit that purpose or to any way tear away at your value. If that's what you're learning from me, when you go out and you face oppressive systems, you already got a team behind you that had your back, that taught you, now we ain't got to stand for that, right? And that's where we can begin to shift systems, not just in our school space, because our schools that we engage with, they are a result of other oppressive systems, right? The ways they've been built, the ways we experience, and many of us, we project the winner's projection on folks. Well, I made it, so you should be able to make it too. And I really want to just talk to the listeners that if you made it in a space that was oppressive, that othered you, that was exploitative in any way, that made you feel less than human, I apologize because you shouldn't have had to experience that. But guess what? The kids 20 years from now don't have to experience that. What are we committed to do to make sure no one has to make it through the thing that we made it through? Or are we so pompous? Are we so, full of ourselves that we'll say, well, if I got through it, you should do it too. That's harmful, right? And I think that's where that push comes for us to build our capacity. So it was beautiful, man. It was beautiful to see 18 different campuses have their people here learning tools, practicing those tools. And I think the way Noble is approaching this is powerful. And I think what needs to remain is a commitment to not just teach us, not just give us these spaces, but to recenter us time and time again, that this is about making sure humans can flourish in our campuses, in our classrooms. And my full belief is when this becomes normal, when restorative circles and mediations and having these type of conversations, when being open and honest and clear about the fact that every one of our children deserves dignity and to be affirmed, when that becomes normal, now we're building the next set of leaders where that becomes normal in their communities. Yes. That becomes normal when they're facing policies and practices that dehumanize. That becomes normal when they move to states where people are outlawing the ability to tell the truth. Like, you got to get our youth in a space to where they feel that support because, restorative practice, it sticks with the host.
So let's take a moment to hear from our deans of culture about what they felt was the most valuable part of their learning for the day.
What stood out most to me today with regards to talking about restorative practices has been this notion of restorative practices having to be culturally responsive. And I love the way we've been framing and defining culture as the ways in which a group of people make meaning of the world around them. So restorative practice having to be cognizant of the ways in which that people are experiencing and being already, and just finding ways to complement and address those things, I think was very important. It removes the notion of institutional sovereignty with regards to what we're doing. The goal is no longer to make the institution better, but the institution grows because of the health of its members.
Today, being able to just do the circle today as a group made it very evident of how we can just do this pretty consistently through the day to just build community and what that will do for our students, and the ripple effect that we'll have throughout the day. So I think it's just exactly what Terrence said today is seeing the human. I think that when we are in the building in the hours that the school day is running, we have so many goals and ideas that we want to get through that we do lose track of just the individual human that is in front of us. And I think when you're in a circle, you can't. You have to connect, you have to hear, you have to listen. And it's really, really hard to go back into a different setting and not still see that human. So I'm just super excited for the push. I've been here 10 years. And so the conversations that have changed in these rooms are just remarkable. And so to be able to have an entire day talking about how to humanize our students is pretty remarkable.
I think I was really energized being back in a building with the rest of the deans and the culture teams. I think the thing that stood out to me the most was just kind of the resources that we were given to be able to take back to our campuses and just kind of collaborate with staff. I was really excited about restorative, some of the restorative conversations that are going to be taking place at our campus, particularly with our culture team. I feel like having the trainings that we did today gave our team more confidence in being able to say hey, I can actually do this. A lot of the practice that we did back in our spaces was, I think, empowering because it just showed our team that hey, we can actually do this work. It's not as difficult. Where I really feel that moving forward, not only our culture team can do, but we can also share that with our staff.
I think something that stood out to me the most was when he stated that restorative has to start with us building the students person to self, person to person, and then person to institution. I feel like working in the education system in general, we're always trying to restore, even if a student is coming back, we're trying to restore them to the institution. But we need to, one thing that stood out to me was that we need to restore them to themselves. So just because they made that mistake, what made them make that mistake? Maybe how are they feeling? What are some things that's going on in their personal life that's affecting the things that they're doing in their day-to-day? So restore them to themselves, person to person, and then to the institution is what really stood out to me.
Stood out to me most today was definitely just keeping me grounded in making sure that we are, intentional with our restorative circles, intentional with our R3s. I think like the restorative mindset is like, you know, as Terrence pointed out, like restoration, like you get this car, like this old car, and you continue to like put into it, put time into it, put the work in and things like that. And like ultimately, like with a child, when we get a human, a 13, 14-year-old, we have to continue to like mold them and put work into them for it to be this big, shining, bright person when we're done, and to go on and lead successful things in life after high school. So you have to continue to put the work in. I think like through restorative conversations, through mediations, day to day, continue to like push and remind students that it's okay to make mistakes and things like that. We just have to restore and correct ourselves and move forward. That's a great thing.
She said restorative minutes is instructional minutes. And a lot of the buy-in is that teachers feel like what Mr. Pruitt's doing with his organization and the youth that he's working with in Nashville